She's so surprised.
Brain dead.
Scott, you can talk, follow his request. I'm fine with that.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Billy, you wanna lead us in the pledge?
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Doesn't look like we got anybody for privilege of the floor, so moving on. Approval of the minutes from our two public hearings and the November 8th regular meeting.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from November 8th and.
All three meetings?
All three meetings.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. All right. Let's see, old business, we got the student housing regs that everybody's gotten a copy of the village's code. My illustrious deputy supervisor had a brilliant idea that we should give this to the codes committee and let them put together a Town Mtg version.
I'd love to see it.
You'd love to see it.
Yeah, I think basically if you guys on the code committee could look over the village's law that they have and come up with something that we can, you know, adopt for Delhi, you know, I mean, to go to our codes department and ask them to do it, it really isn't their thing. I mean, we need to propose what we want, and then once we do it, we give it to them and it'll be the law. You know, but we need to develop what we want. So, I had given Mark some examples, of different ones around the villages, Milford.
Well, that was short-term rentals.
Yeah, short-term rentals,
Yeah,
but
'cause we've got
some of
two
those
different
things can be
issues.
adopted.
We've got the villages code,
Mm-hmm.
which we were looking at first. Then we've got some samples of short-term rental codes that have been adopted.
Well, the villages was brought up from other college towns, so
Yeah,
we
the
pieced it
villages,
all
I think,
together.
yeah, I think the villages is pretty much ready to go once we tweak it for Delhi.
Yeah,
The other ones, we're still trying to get a decision from state codes. My only concern on all the other proposals for the short-term rentals is they were passed in 2008 and 2009 before the most recent building code. And I'm not sure if we're gonna get in trouble trying to do something there.
3 cycles of building.
Yeah, so Dale's been trying to track down Town Mtg or somebody at state codes to get a yes or no, we can proceed, or whether we need to do something different.
yeah, I'm more concerned with trying to get something done with a student.
I think, yeah, I think we get the village code adapted, you know, so we can pass it town-wide.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a good spot to start.
Didn't you kick that out to our attorney? The village proposal?
Yeah, I think the only thing we've got to,
And did he have any other recommendations?
his big recommendation was when we do the fees for registration and whatnot, to make sure that we do it so that we can add it to their tax bill if it doesn't
Right.
get paid. So that, the financial end of it, we'll have him draft, but if we can get the rest of it worded for the town, we'll pass
Okay.
that to him and then, let him handle the money end of it.
Okay.
But yeah, if you can, Billy and Dale can
Yep.
make sure we get that tweaked. And, we can get that ready by the next meeting, and we can schedule a public hearing on it.
Okay.
Get moving forward on that.
Did the planning board look at that too? Are they all right with this?
Has the planning board looked at the village reg for the,
Yes.
the student?
A couple months ago.
Okay. Any issues with that, the village law?
No, not
I mean,
really.
it kinda covers the bases, you
Right.
know?
Yep.
We just wanna get something in there.
non-resident
before we-
landlords and,
Yeah.
inspections and registration and.
I mean, the best
parking
thing
and-
is it holds somebody accountable,
Yeah.
locally,
Right.
so when you have an issue, you
Sure.
can
Yeah.
deal with it,
Yeah.
instead of chasing somebody from 4 states away.
And, just on the same topic as the planning board, they also, made a motion to recommend to the town council that you review and approve the flag lot proposal, that section 545, we've had gathering dust for a while.
Okay,
And, they made similar recommendation to recommend to the town council to change zoning law to include and regulate short-term rentals.
right. The flag lots, I think, is a pretty easy, quick one.
Yeah,
The-
Nicole's got-
The short-term rentals, we're gonna have to be careful with the wording, and we may have to run it past the state to get approval. Do you have the,
But we are quite due to have that done.
yeah,
There's so many of them that are happening, and they're unregulated. And they really need to be so that people know they're staying in a safe environment when they come in.
well, they're.
And that and the fact that we
they're
have
not
no other
unregulated.
short-term
The state
housing
says if you're
for
not-
people to stay.
yeah, the state's view is if you're not living there, it's not a bed and breakfast, it's a home.
No, that's true. That's absolutely true.
And that's
And that's
what
why
Dale's
Milford
regulating
and
the mass,
Cooperstown
which is creating the
enacted their
problem.
ordinances and their laws,
Yeah.
so that they could be, the state reviews them as being more restrictive, which is okay, they're allowed to do that. And then they have a system where they can register and regulate and make people safe, because it's gonna continue. And not only that, if you're gonna have the economy and travel and tourism here, they're either gonna travel right through the county, or they need a place to stay. And right now, there isn't any.
With this flag lot, John, are you talking about reducing the ratio, the front to rear ratio?
I'm gonna let Nicole, well,
Am I
just because
jumping
she's,
forward? I'm sorry.
she brought our proposal with her, and really, it's the same proposal that, I don't know what year it was, I think it predates everybody on the board.
Yeah, I
But-
haven't seen the proposal that ever got written up, I mean, we've been asking for it for 20-some years.
Well, so, and you asked about percentage, so there's really only 5 points that were on this section 545 proposal. Then it was that flag lots may be permitted by the planning board during the subdivision review process where appropriate to allow for
Spell-
the
spell it
economical
out, not
development.
appropriate.
We know.
But the access strip of land shall be a minimum of 50 feet wide and shall not exceed a grade of 12%. Minimum lot area, lot width, and lot depth requirements shall be met exclusive of the land contained in the access strip. So in other words, if you've got a minimum 5 acres, you can't count that access strip, you've gotta have the 5 acres
You gotta have the
in
5
the
acres
lot.
behind
Yeah.
the access.
Minimum front, side, and rear setback requirements shall be met excluding the narrow access, so still the main lot. No more than one flag lot shall be served by a single access strip. That was the big concern in the past, that, oh, you're gonna have this access strip, and then you're gonna
You're gonna have a bunch of
subdivide
houses
into,
popping up.
and the next thing you know, the town's gonna have to take over this access strip as a road. And because of multiple housing up in there. So that's hopefully addressed there, that no more than one flag lot shall be served by a single access strip. An access strip shall be a minimum distance apart of at least the minimum frontage of a standard lot.
So if the road frontage is 250,
Right, and you can't have another
Can't have
access
another
strip
one
for
for
another
250
250 down the road.
like I said, the one issue they had years back was finding places, but with the 911 system now, you can post your 911 number at the end of the driveway and everybody can find you. So
I think
don't
the only
see-
other question we had was for the highway super was what is the minimum width of a town road that it would need to be? Because some towns have determined that if they make the access strip 50 or 60 feet wide and in the future, and there's 250 acres back there, someone wants to make that a standard town road or bring it up to code and do a subdivision, they would still have the ability to do that. So whatever this, we have 50 feet in here, but if it's 60, then it should be changed to that. If you would, still like, again, someone bringing that road up to the town standard for a road, they could then develop back there, and do a subdivision if the acreage supports it. Because,
If New
you
York
know,
City
in,
isn't still here.
Well, because what I did
No,
put in
we're
that,
still here.
that cover memo is that, you know, this was something when the zoning was originally adopted in the nineties, that was, I believe, included in the zoning, and then the town asked that we take it out. Whereas other towns that have the same kind of zoning you did kept it, because we had a lot of development where, along the roads, and we had large parcels behind that we knew that had to be accessed somehow. So the idea was, even if someone did do a flag lot, we wanted it to be wide enough that in the future, if people wanted to subdivide back there and the land was suitable, that it could be subdivided. So I think in terms of the language you have, that would be the only outstanding question, about the flag lot section. And you do know that state codes indicate that anything over 800 feet, has to be reviewed in a different way, because that's the minimum requirement. I think Tom could speak to that as well as John. Once it's past that, the building inspector has the right to refuse a building permit back there to make sure that an emergency vehicle could get there. So in other towns, if it's over 800 feet, we usually consult with the fire department and have them give us a ruling on if they feel the access strip is safe enough to go like to 1,000 or 1,200 feet or something like that.
That have passing areas and so forth,
Yes.
every 200 feet or something.
Yes, so when, it's been very rare that they've been that long, but in one or two instances it's happened, so we've done a more, a more intensive review of those. And, getting the emergency services involved to make sure that it's safely built and emergency vehicles can safely access. It's not in the zoning regulation because it's a state code
It's
issue.
a state code, it's in the state building code.
Right.
And the planning board would be looking at all that when they do the
Yes.
subdivision. They can put whatever conditions
Yeah.
they feel appropriate.
And I think at the discussions, John had done a lot of research on the short-term rentals. And I think, the conclusion of the planning board was that even knowing the state is not clear or they're silent on the issue, that the danger of leaving it unaddressed was worse than doing something. But, I did put in there that you need to talk to the town attorney about what a standalone law, or would you want this to be worked into a zoning amendment? What would be the best thing for that, or if action should be taken? But I think the planning board's recommendation was to take action based on the amount of, rentals we're talking about, the issue that came up at the last site plan special permit review that brought this to their attention, and, the possibility of town liability if we know this is happening and we don't do anything. So,
Yeah, that's the one where I really would like to get some kind of guidance from state codes on,
Yeah.
because it's an issue everywhere, and somebody needs to step up to the plate and make a decision.
Has anyone
Everybody can do
reached
the
out
same
to the state yet about
We've
this?
been trying.
Yes.
I know we've got a
Call
stop
back.
work order in effect
Our
on one of
regional
these
rep
places.
has apparently disappeared or flown the coop.
I have a
I'm not
couple
sure.
numbers at home that they gave us when we were in Margaretville for that so-called training session that day. But they did give us some numbers to call. It was worth the trip over there for that.
Got some phone numbers at
Just
least.
to get the phone number.
That's got the phone number.
The biggest problem with any time you go to the state, in my opinion, and in my experience, is nobody's gonna give you an answer. It's all, well.
Bureaucrats don't do that.
Yeah, right, so
That
we
doesn't serve
probably should move forward and take a look at what Milford's done and our, towns that are nearby that have dealt with this, and just get it done, because if we're gonna wait for the state to tell us what to do, it isn't gonna happen, in my opinion. I mean, I just think if we follow some guideline that's already out there that seems to be working, that's probably gonna be our best bet.
And then reach out to the state and say, what do you think?
Yeah, exactly,
Based on this has been done in a neighboring county.
right.
And there is no other town in Delaware County that has any such reg. And every third person I do a home inspection for, they're talking about how they'll, occupy the place on weekends and offset their property taxes as part of their plan, as part of what's generating the real estate industry. And a lot of it's all connected to the whole destination wedding industry, because they're constantly at a loss for lodging for folks. They're lodging folks in
I'm selling
Oneonta for
insurance to these
Roxbury.
people all the time,
Yeah,
all the time,
Sure.
coming up buying these places, and
yeah.
that's what they're doing,
Mhm.
so.
Yeah, and I think your toughest part will be coming up with a structure to administer it. And how do you make sure these people know that they're supposed to be registered with the town and inspected, and that's gonna be
Basically about the only
the tougher
simple
part.
way of doing it is to put a letter in the tax bills when they go out.
Yeah,
Which-
one of the villages put it in the water bill,
Yeah. well,
That's how
we
they-
don't have a water bill.
yeah, so the taxes is the next best.
Yeah, that makes
That's
sense.
about the only way, that way, if they pay their taxes or get their tax bill, it doesn't come back, you can assume they got the notice. And then it's kinda up to them to follow through,
Yep, and you did your due
Because you'll
diligence.
be chasing your tail.
yeah.
They'll pop up and they'll go down, they'll go
No, I
up
know.
and down, and you'll be following smoke.
And I know I talked to Dale about it, and I said, there's gonna be an impact on someone's job with these annual inspections. But yet, I also thought, I said, well, if you had 50 of them in the town, that's one annual inspection a week. It's not that big of an impact when you put it in that perspective.
Well, that's it, we really don't know how many there's gonna
But
be.
we don't, yeah,
You
we
know,
don't.
until we get some responses back of how many people are actually doing it. It may be 30, it may be,
I went to the
70.
Airbnb website and I saw targets all over the map. You know, there's plenty of, and those are just ones that registered with Airbnb, you know, which is also an avenue for regulation, I believe. It's Airbnb collects the bed tax and Airbnb,
supposedly.
you know, does some of that. I'm not real clear on that system.
Yeah, I think we need to get a little, input on whether an 08 and 09 regs are
Oh, yeah.
fly past the state now, or whether we've
Well,
got
I read on, at least on the
Lots of
bed and
other
breakfast definition, that actually they increased the number of allowable bedrooms in a actual, you know, owner-occupied bed and breakfast. Used to be 3, now
it's
it's
5.
5, you know, so there's been some,
Up to 5 bedrooms, up to 10 guests.
yeah, 2 guests per, yep.
And like I said, they're still regulated as a single-family home.
Yeah, sure.
Those, you know, bed and breakfast, I don't know whether we wanna get into regulating bed and breakfasts that are owner-occupied.
They're already regulated by the
They're
state
already there.
building code. They're
That's it.
defined in the state
Yeah.
building code. It's this short-term rental. The
Yeah,
only definition you will find is short-term rental is less than 30 days for compensation. And
problem is
the
our
only
first
two
two is
classifications is,
transient.
like Dale said, bed and breakfast, expressly owner occupied, or your hotel. And that leaves a big gray
That's it,
gap
because
between the
they
two.
link short-term rentals to transient. And
Yeah,
once you say transient, then the building code is crystal clear, it's a hotel or motel, if it's less than 30 days.
Right, exactly.
So, we need to find a way of
Gotta make your own
sticking something in
classification.
between.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
we need a middle ground,
Yeah.
cause I mean,
Well,
face it,
the
in the county, you're
municipal
not gonna be
home
able to do a
rule law,
hotel.
we can use the municipal home rule law, don't
Yeah.
matter what state says. We can enact our own local law, that's what they did here for this one. Is use the
Well, and also the
municipal
state
home rule law
code
and the
doesn't have a
town
problem with
law.
it because they're more
More
restrictive.
restrictive
Yeah.
than the state.
Well, it's not, because the state's coming with a hotel.
But I think we can get around, I
There-
just think
there's
we
the
can get
issue.
around it. I
The
think
way
Well, but
it's-
the
way
state-
it's
the
defined
state-
Right now, it would be a hotel.
And the way the state looked at it, as I understand it, the state didn't address it the way you just did. The state said, all right, you are regulating these places that right now are not being regulated. That's more restrictive. And we would like you to do that, because they have no system to do
Well,
it.
they're not being regulated because nobody's wanted to
Because
get
nobody's done it.
involved.
Exactly. That's why we're pushing to
My,
do it.
my concern is if we are, you know, we do pass our own law and say we're gonna regulate them as a short-term rental and blah, 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 and then somebody gets hurt there, then we wind up in court and it's like, well, that should have been classified as a hotel.
Well, that's no different than any other thing you issue a building permit on. If somebody gets hurt on it,
Yeah.
it's, as long as they're within the regulations that you wrote, I don't know, now we're stretching into legal territory I shouldn't stretch into, it's just opinion.
Yeah, it's just,
Yeah.
it's
But I
it's a
understand
mess,
your
and that's why
concerns.
nobody wants to address it, because it becomes a mess. But nobody wants to take the liability, the state will say, well, you can regulate them, yeah, until something goes wrong.
But for somebody to register on Airbnb, they don't have to show any evidence of any kind of, you know, like.
No, they're doing whatever they want.
Yeah, that would be the ideal. I mean, I know that's unrealistic, but if they had to show a municipal certificate that says, yeah, it's been inspected as a.
Like I said, I like Milford's law.
Yeah.
I just wanna be sure that we can pass it in 2016 or 17 and it'll still hold water. But,
Well, you're never gonna get anybody to tell you that,
well,
that's the problem.
Right, and I just don't think we can wait around for the state, because they're certainly not gonna stand in our corner when something goes wrong.
What's the main reservation of not just passing it now? Because we want the attorney to,
my problem is I've been trained as code enforcement, and the building code says it's this or it's that.
okay, so you're saying that really technically the hotels.
Until it's
You
cleaned
can
up.
pass a more restrictive law, but then you have to get it approved by the state.
Mhm.
If you do a more restrictive law than the state building code, which they do allow you. Now, I'm not sure letting somebody operate what the code says is a hotel, letting them operate as a short-term rental and regulating it as such, I'm not sure that really, it puts our code enforcement officer in a bad position.
But then it sounds like the rest of the board thinks that, well, if we're waiting for the state to clarify that, then we're just basically choosing no action, because the state's not going to.
Well, we're not choosing no action. Dale is regulating them as the building code calls, so the house.
Yeah,
As far as,
basically
you know-
that is shutting them all down, because you're not gonna take a
Yeah,
private
basically,
residence and call it a
yeah.
hotel or make it a hotel.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna look at it that way, and if he's gonna force it
Well, it
that way,
comes back
then
to
you
that
might as well
if
outlaw
you
him,
wanna
because
do
that's
it,
what
then
you
it's
just
gonna have to
did.
be an owner-occupied bed and breakfast. That's.
Well, it's gonna be,
you know,
they're gonna do it, they're doing it now, they don't care what your law is, and they don't care what the state is, they're making the money, they're doing it, VRBO or
I don't know that
Airbnb
passing
or
the law's
all.
gonna change that either, though.
Well, it could, because then we're going to actively try to reach out to these people and make sure they know what the law is for the town of Delhi.
And it will for some, there's
It's
also
gonna be a
avenues
group that is gonna
of different
resist.
people that do the bookings, that, look, you're only gonna book these registered properties. And, certainly it's not a smooth process, because there's no real process in place, and you have to kind of work your way through it, but on the other hand, I don't see turning back from it is a real viable option for us.
So the planning board wants us to do it.
Well, the planning board suggests we do something. And I think really the easiest for you to do is with a zoning ordinance as opposed to a local law. And I think either way can work. When we talk about that?
Yeah, it could work either way, and I do say you should ask your town attorney, but we feel because the planning board's on the front line in terms of reviewing them,
I mean, it's,
It
the
makes
zoning
sense.
ordinance makes sense if you have all the regs in one spot.
yes.
From a legal standpoint, they say a local law holds more weight than a zoning
It also depends
ordinance.
on,
In a
what you
case where
use-
somebody wants to challenge it, a law is given the presumption that it's legal
right,
until they prove otherwise, where a zoning ordinance can get kind of mucky.
I think it all depends on under what statute you adopt it. So that's something your town attorney can help you with. And just to point out, if and when you move ahead on the flag lots, our department can help with the seeker public hearing notice and all of that you would need to do that.
And as long as we're doing that, I'd like to get that floodplain, floodway issue and the zoning fixed
Yes,
that we've asked for
forever.
forever.
I have that opinion letter, and I think
Well,
the
that's good.
language I worked on when we went through that.
All we gotta
2
do is
years ago.
change the first page where it says you can't build in a floodway,
Right,
is what it's supposed to say, instead of saying you can't build in a floodplain.
right,
Cause the next page says if you build in a floodplain, here's what you gotta do.
right.
So I mean, it was obvious that it was a misprint, but it's never been corrected, and I think it's time to get that corrected as long as we're revising the zoning ordinance.
So we're asking our attorney to advise us
So
on how to
what-
make it a zone.
What do you wanna do, have Dave review like Milford's? I like Milford's law. I mean, it's pretty
There's good
simple,
language in there.
straightforward, you know, I mean, it obviously works for, you know, baseball hall of fame, the baseball camps, all that kind of stuff.
And it is a law of 7 years. I'd be interested to see how well it's worked for the town of Milford for 7 years.
I've been thinking that too. I had
As
asked,
far as the number of applicants that have come forward versus the ones that are out there on the periphery that are not complying, and how they actually can get them to fall into line.
Yeah.
I'd be curious as to know how that works.
yeah,
I mean,
some
it's
of
no
them
sense
do it,
giving a law that has no teeth, and they aren't going to pursue it if they find people that aren't following the code.
most of them have been able to use the baseball world as their check, because baseball world won't recommend your place for renting to their families that come in unless you are registered with the town. You know, so they're kind of using,
The college
Them
has
is
the
it.
same format up here
I know.
at Res Life. I mean, they call me on all the places in the village to see whether I've inspected or not. And then the ones, I get a list from the outside the village, and I said, not my deal.
right,
So they do have a list up there, for their students.
And that's the difference in Otsego County is Otsego County Codes does the fire inspections for all their short-term rental properties.
That's for student rentals too. You've got two different things here with Airbnbs.
oh, I know, yeah, they're not in
So-
the same basket at
I
all.
wish the county of Delaware would take over all the codes too, which would be nice,
Well, you gotta get the towns to go along with that,
but I know.
and most of them have been restricted to that because they don't wanna give up their local authority.
Some of them already have though.
I know. I know.
All they gotta do is quit doing it and the county has to do it anyway.
Well, yeah, you can do that, but the county can't enforce zoning, so then we gotta hire somebody to be the zoning officer. Good luck getting somebody to do that job.
It could be done. It would be better all the way around, I think, if the county just did it all, in the long run.
Yeah, well,
There's
there's pluses and minuses to both of them, there is. I've always been a proponent of, a resident of that municipality being, officer of that municipality, gives them a little bit better perspective and knowledge about what's going on.
I guess, but the
It's just
law is the
opinion.
law and
I know.
who's
No.
enforcing it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it does.
Well, I'm just saying, they should.
I did it for 15 years, and there's a great variance on how it's
That's why
applied.
sometimes having it in one place and being more consistent.
But you're
there
right,
wouldn't be
yeah.
so much variance.
Yeah, you're
There's
right.
good and bad to that too.
But if you have more than one person at the county doing it, trust me, the consistency isn't necessarily there, because you still have the individuals.
And they'll want to set their own fee schedules, and everyone wants their own way of doing things, and fee schedules are different.
Change is
Difficult to
tough.
do.
Change is tough.
I know, but you gotta go through every single one of the boards, villages, towns, each one's gonna give it in.
Well, and then they no longer have their code enforcement officer answerable
called
to your board,
shared
they're only
services.
answerable to the county.
It's a way to do things cheaper.
Yeah,
And at different times, they've considered circuit riding like they do for the town planning service. To do the same kind of thing, we work with, 29 municipalities, they all have different zoning, different subdivision. It's a lift, and it takes time to have it be efficient.
So what's a pleasure? The committee is gonna look at the village regs for the registering the
Students.
properties
For the students we're
for
talking
the
about.
students.
Okay, yeah.
And then we will get, try to get some input back from the town of Milford,
I'd like to hear input from the Milford side.
and have Dave take a look at their law and
Can we have the code, committee look into that with town of Milford and
Sure.
gather some information?
sure,
Yep.
sounds like a plan. Matt's gonna feel left out here soon, we gotta find something for him.
He's gonna be scraping ice here soon, so.
No, he's putting up Christmas lights, cause he's in it to win it.
He wants a recount.
Okay. Anywho,
Sour grapes over here, so
it's alright.
hope the bear.
I told Billy I was gonna tell you town employees and their families are not eligible to win, but I don't know if they have any rules, so good luck. All right,
Voting's over.
so
I thought
we're
you
gonna
did
try to
fine.
handle the flag lots and everything all in one.
Well, I think we should probably move ahead on some, I mean,
Do we
the
wanna
flag
do
lots
the-
is
Do we
already,
wanna do the zoning, do a public hearing for zoning changes, change the flag lots and change the floodplain